Hello, thank you for the privilege of reading your toes. And interestingly, I got the hiccups right before I got on this. And whenever I have some kind of like yawning or burping or the hiccups, there's energy. There's an energy that is about to be released. So I just invite you to really listen with an open heart and an open mind to the messages that your toes are communicating to you. All your toes are doing is speaking a language. And I happen to be able to interpret this language. And in this reading, I would love to give you insight and education so that you can read your own toes and see where things are going in your life according to your toes. And then we're also going to use your natal chart to show us the overarching map. So you can see here, we've got your natal chart and your toes. In these Stars to Souls reading, the natal chart is the overarching map of your life in this lifetime. Your toes tell you the current location where you are, your starting point as of right now, where you are in this map. And then a lot of times in these sessions, I will pull cards. And I'm traveling right now, so I don't have the card deck that's coming to me for you, but that's something that we can communicate about later. And I can definitely get that card pulled for you. And the card gives us like next step directions, the directions to the next mile marker. So when I'm looking at your toes, there's a couple of very strong messages that I'm receiving from your toes. So just a little bit of education. Your right foot tells you how you are with the outside world, what is your interaction with that world, and how are people experiencing you outside. Your left foot is your internal world. It's your communication with yourself, your relationship with yourself, and your connection with source. And so when I look at your toes, the very first message that your toes send to me to communicate to you is that you have this bunion or this protrusion here. I can't diagnose anything. I don't know if you've received a diagnosis. I don't know how this impacts your life, but right here, and then more important to me in this toe reading communication to you than this is the direction that it's sending this toe. This is your life path toe. So when we look at the 2 feet together, and we see that both toes, your spirit path toe and your life path toe, are definitely leaning out and looking to the future. They're not grounded in the present. And especially this right foot. So if we look at the trajectory of the toes with your left foot, it's coming over here. This left toe is leaning over. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. But the rest of your toes are relatively straight. On this foot, it's pointing over, and the rest of the toes all have kind of a leaning, specifically this toe and this toe. They lean towards the future. When toes are looking to the little toes, it means it's looking to the future. When they're looking the other way, they're looking to the past. So when we see bunions, or when we see this very forward directed trajectory life path toe, one, there's a lack of presence. We are not in a culture that, people talk about being present all the time. You hear this all the time nowadays, is be present and just take a breath and get grounded. But then outside of those moments are the structures around our culture and our beliefs as to what brings us value do not support being present. In fact, they support being unpresent, ungrounded, and always looking to the future, thinking that there's something better out there. On the plus side, this can be optimism. We always want to have a hope. So there's a difference between looking to the future, hoping that it's better, and just having hope. Hope is a motivator. Hope inspires us to move forward. But what I'm seeing in your toes is a lack of satisfaction in the present and looking to the future and hoping that it's better. Also, when there's this big leaning over of the toe, and based on your chart as well, your natal chart, my guess is that you've spent a lot of your life pleasing other people, staying quiet to keep the peace, acquiescing your will to the will of somebody that has a louder voice or that you perceive to have more wisdom or more authority. And you know that you're strong. And so sometimes you will go along with something that is not in alignment with you simply to keep the peace, because peace is very, very important to you. Relationships are very, very important to you. And this is impacting you. It's showing up here in your toes. And so the question that I would invite you to ask yourself is, in what areas am I out of alignment in order to keep the peace? Another way to think of this is, what shoulds, SHOULD, what shoulds am I shoulding on myself with? That's a Tony Robbins thing, shoulding on yourself. In what ways am I shoulding on myself? Because there's these things that I think that I need to do, be, say, think, and they're actually not in alignment, or they don't align with my experience, or they don't align with my true beliefs. And how is this showing up in your life? I would love to know what you do for a career, because I would encourage you to rethink what you're doing in your career. Why are you doing your career? Is it a heart space, or is it a should? Is it a place that you think you can make money and that's the primary motivator, even if you don't like it or it's not in alignment with you? So really look at those shoulds. What do you think you should be doing that you do out of obligation? So find the obligation energy and then really think about it. And if it doesn't align with you, creating a plan to stop that and then going through with that plan. It is time for you in your young life, because this is showing up very early in your life. This can become a breaking point mentally, spiritually, emotionally. So that's the primary message. And I know I went on about that for a while, and that's because it's really, really important. This toe with this angle on it is going to become a breaking point. And when we allow ourselves to break, it causes a lot of collateral damage, as opposed to if we can, and this is the blessing of toe reading, see what's coming so that we can then make plans around it, so that we don't, it's not like a bottle of soda that you just shake, 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 and then it explodes. It can be like that shaken bottle of soda. In fact, that's an image energetically that's coming to my mind for you right now, is a shaken bottle of soda. In what areas do you feel like you might just explode? What relationships feel so constrictive that you might explode? And these can be relationships with people, institutions, communities. These things can all be this container. You're ready to explode out of that container. And when you just explode, it causes collateral damage to you and to the people around you, as opposed to acknowledging that you are a shaken up bottle of soda right now and creating a plan that can slowly release, as if I'm unscrewing the top of a 2-liter bottle, slowly release the pressure, or more intentionally, that's the word, not slowly, because it doesn't have to be slow, but more intentionally release the pressure so that there is less collateral damage to you and the people that you care about, because you do care absolutely very, very deeply about people and your relationships. I can see this in your relationship toe here on the right side. This toe, a lot of times these toes are very karmic. They have a lot of generational stuff and a lot of blocked energy. You do have some blocked energy, which is normal in this toe, but look at this toe is very straight, nice strong nail on there, and there's a point to that toe. Relationships are a primary motivator for you in your life, which is probably why you will sometimes do, say, be, think things that don't actually align with you, because you value the relationship with the person or institution or, community more than you value sometimes yourself. And I can see this because when we look at the difference between these two toes, this is your relationship with others, straight, little bit pointy, not a lot of blocked energy, strong nail. When we look at this toe has a lot more blocked energy in it, and it's curving more here into your action toe, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But you can see that there's a lot more blocked energy in this toe. This is your relationship with yourself. And this correlates to what you've got going on over here. Okay. So questions I would ask you really here go along with the questions to ask yourself here. Where are you out of alignment? And where have you made choices where you are playing the role of the hero because you're the one keeping the peace? You're the one that's keeping this group together. I imagine in a lot of your social circles, you're like the glue that keeps people together. You're the hub of the community. And in what ways is that not working for you? In what ways is that tiring you out mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically? So just asking yourself that question. All right, let's talk next about your spirit path toe here. In your spirit path toe, so we also see a trajectory this way where the nail and the toe are pointing towards the future, towards the little toe. In this foot, though, I want you to just imagine and do this exercise where you're going to get your fingers and you're going to gently push the top of that toe out more towards the center and push in down on this part of your toe. So one of your fingers are going to push out this way and the other finger is going to push in this way, and just training the energy there. All right. What would life be like if this was the new energy pattern here? This is your spirit path toe. In what ways is your spiritual path working for you? And in what ways is it not? And while you're doing this, and gently even massaging, so massaging up this way and then up this way, and then you can go down this way as well. So I'm thinking up this way, down this way, and then continuing to push here while you just gently move up this way. But what we're wanting to do again is bring that toe into center and then allowing the toe to communicate with us. Everything can communicate with us, and our toes are our first messengers. What shows up in the toes will show up long before it shows up in your body. And so what parts of your spiritual path are working for you and what parts aren't? What does this mean for you? What does it look like to follow your individualized spiritual path? What fears do you have around that? What spiritual path containers have you put yourself in, or have you allowed to be put in? And what does this say about you? Those are some great journaling questions and questions to ask as you put this toe into alignment. Now, you have a great deal of leadership capacity. I imagine, like I said, you are kind of the hub of many communities that you're part of. You are glue in friend groups, family groups, social groups, because you are an absolute leader. And people energetically are going to read this from you. You are a leader. You are someone that people can trust. This shows up in your star chart too, which we're going to pull up in just a second. And then this space here between your upper toes and the lower part of your toes is the channel of intuition. So imagine if this toe was straight and you had all this inherent leadership capacity, and then you opened up this intuitive channel. This is a life changer. To open up that intuitive channel will make a huge difference in your life and in the lives of everybody that you love. Now, it can be scary because in life we're always dancing with people. So this analogy, we're dancing with people. And if you've ever danced in you know that if you start changing the dance, that's a little uncomfortable. That's a little bit uncomfortable for you. It's a little bit uncomfortable for your partner. And sometimes it can be a little uncomfortable for everybody else on the dance floor. And so it really can be. So acknowledging that this does feel weird, but what is the dance? Are you just dancing this dance that you've been dancing because it's what you were taught, because it's what everybody's dancing, because it's the music of whatever cultures you are a part of, the music that they have blaring over the loudspeakers? And when is it going to be time for you to decide what your own dance is? And you are young, you've got lots of time to figure this out, and your toes are saying that starting on this now is important. And then the great thing is you might start a new dance now, and in a few years or a few months or even a few decades realize, oh, that dance worked for me for a while, but now it's time for an even different dance again, and changing the dance again. You are approaching, let's see, in the next few years, you're going to be approaching your Saturn return in your chart. And that is a time when many of the structures, the beliefs, the systems, the hierarchies, and the powers that be, we start to question. So just be aware of that. And we can start to feel that even just a couple of years before. That's a little bit farther in your future, but still just be aware of that. If you can start that process now, it's going to make your life in 5 years a lot less explosive, like that shaken up bottle of soda. If you wait to make these changes when your Saturn return comes around, and again, I will explain that when I move to your chart, that could be the explosion of the soda bottle out. And so by doing these things now, this is starting to loosen up that valve so that it can be an intentional releasing of the things that are keeping you tight. Okay, and the same can be said for these toes over here, although I find it interesting that this toe here is moving over, almost like, no, I've got to keep this intuition. I've got to keep this intuition. When really it's this life path toe that's pushing and saying, no, we got to close that off. No, that's too out there, and pushing to close that out. So I would recommend the same technique that I mentioned with this toe in that massage of that toe, do it with this toe as well. I have actually seen protrusions like this go away on their own without anything intervening, simply by resolving. And this isn't an anomaly. I see this a lot. Simply by, and I say simply because transformation is never easy, but it is rather simple. By utilizing these techniques and others that will be shown to you as you get on your life path. So pushing in here on the bottom part of your toe, and then pushing out here at the top part, and just asking that toe to realign. What is the message from this toe? What is this toe wanting to communicate to you? And just gently moving the toes in that direction will be very helpful. You are also going to observe as you do this, an increase in your intuition. So be listening for how your intuition speaks to you. Intuition is not something that it's kind of like what we were talking about before, being grounded, being present. It's something that a lot of people, there's a lot of lip service given to it. But the truth is having people live in their intuition is very scary to established norms and hierarchies. And so there's systematic suppression of intuition, and your toes are showing that. So it's time to bust out of that in the most loving, intentional, and safe way possible. All right, we are going to move over here to your chart, and then we'll come back to your toes, and we'll talk about that here. So when we look at your chart, so there's a few kind of interesting things that are happening. So first of all, right now, I was talking before about your Saturn return. So your Saturn is here in Aries at 14 degrees. Right now, at the end of 2022, Saturn is in Aquarius. So Saturn's going to tick up here, go through Pisces, and then in 4 or 5 years, Saturn is going out, and I can give you exact times of this. That's out of the scope of this particular reading, but that's something I would be glad to do, is going to come here. When you have your Saturn return, it's the time again where you're going to be questioning. Saturn is like the father figure of the zodiac. Saturn rules all things hierarchical structures. Saturn is very strict. Saturn has a bad reputation, and it's because Saturn is very strict, but he's only strict because he wants us to succeed. He's only strict because he wants us to climb up out of the mire and shine. And so when Saturn comes around, about around every 30 years is when you get your Saturn return. So 30, 60, and those of us that can make it to 90 years. I'm hoping to get 4 Saturn returns myself. So think back to when you were 14 and 15. That was when Saturn was over here in the sign of Libra at 14 degrees Libra. And this would be a good journaling activity, is to just write down what was happening mentally, spiritually, emotionally when you were 14, 15, 16 years old, that time range right there. And that is usually a precursor, if you will, to what can happen there at our Saturn return at age 30. And so understanding that now, again, can loosen that off. Ooh, I've got a sneeze coming, which means that there's some energy releasing right now. It's going to come. But so just be aware of that. Now, when we look at your chart, you have a super interesting chart. So you've got your sun down here in the deep, deep waters of Scorpio. Scorpio is the fixed water sign. So that means it's the deep waters. Water is you are a very intuitive person because your moon is up here in the cardinal sign of Cancer, another water sign. So your two of your major pillars of your chart are in water signs, your sun in deep Scorpio and your moon up here in Cancer. So let's talk a little bit about what this means. So your sun down here in Scorpio, your sun, it represents you, your inherent gifts, talents, the way that you shine, just like the sun. You are a deep person. You have deep thoughts. You desire truth and transformation. My guess is that you have had power struggles in your life, which may be why we see in this toe that you, because you're intunely and intensely aware of power and power dynamics, you are strong, and you know that you're strong. Scorpio is extremely intense. You will sometimes, and a lot of times, just acquiesce to the power that you perceive to be the most powerful, to keep the peace, to not cause a fight, especially because this shows up in your third house. So how does this show up with your siblings, with your close family? How does this show up in your communication? Do you ever struggle with passive aggressive behaviors or thought processes? This is sometimes the shadow side of Scorpio. The light side of Scorpio is truth. You seek and desire deep truth. And this also shows up here in your action toes, which we're going to talk about at length when we talk about Mercury in Sagittarius and Mars in Capricorn. So your sun is, if we're using the analogy of a body, your sun is like your physical body, your skin. It is the way people experience you after they get through your rising sign, which we're going to talk about in just a moment. So your inherent gifts are seeking truth. You are intense. You are very intuitive. And you definitely have a magical sparkle to you, which can be extremely threatening to sources of authority and power that we perceive. And so that's with your Chiron. Chiron is the wounded healer in Greek mythology. And Chiron is also in Scorpio. So Chiron, the wounded healer, shows us where our deepest wounds are. And with that, the power of that wound, that is the area that we can actually have the most impact in our lives, because we know what it feels like to have this wound. Chiron, the wounded healer, in Greek mythology, he experienced several wounds. Abandonment, and physical wounds, self-betrayal, betrayal by friends. So lots of these wounds, and he was never able to heal from some of his wounds. Some of our wounds we will never be able to heal from, but we can heal others. And that's what Chiron did. He was never able to heal some of his wounds, but he was able to teach others how to heal those wounds. So the fact that you've got your Chiron and your sun here in Scorpio is very important for you to know and to embrace your intuitive gifts and your truth-seeking. I imagine that you are a person who really doesn't care about relationships that are surface level. You really want to get in deep with people and have deep and meaningful relationships. And how has this shown up for you? And do you sometimes put up with relationships that are less than you want them to be, or relationships that would really be better to be out of your space, that are not deep relationships that you desire, that you crave, and that you are good at? Again, because of the shoulds. And I point here to your toes again, because relationships are highly, highly important to you. Let's talk about your moon in Cancer. Your moon is your emotional needs, your emotional self. It's your heart. If we were using that analogy of the sun being the outside part of your body, the moon is your heart, and it is in Cancer. And Cancer desires safety, it desires to create safe communities. Cancer is ruled by the moon. And so it's nice that the moon is right here, and it's reigning space of Cancer. So very feminine, very intuitive, very nurturing. So Cancer desires safety for self and safety for others. And so again, we go back to what's showing up here in your toes. You want to create safe space for others, but you don't always do it for yourself. Or because people look to you to be the leader, you will self-sacrifice so that people can have a space of safety. And I put safety in air quotes because if the leader doesn't feel safe, if the leader is engaging in thought and emotional patterns like self-sabotage and self-sacrifice, it is a pseudo-safe place where other people feel safe, but where you may not feel safe. That would be a good space to journal in, is in that. Some of the non-negotiable needs, our moon sign is our non-negotiable needs. So this space of safety in community. Cancer is also, it's very important that people who have Cancer in their zodiac strongly, like you have your moon, that you know what your boundaries are and that you communicate your boundaries. Now, sometimes there's a lot of talk out there about boundaries, and we feel like boundaries are these things that we have to stand with, our metaphorical sword and defend. And you crossed my boundary, and can become this blame game. Or boundaries can feel hard and rigid. And with all this water in your chart, sometimes that hard rigidity, kind of like that soda bottle analogy that we've been using, it doesn't feel good because water, what does water do? Water just flows if it's not contained. And so finding the most uplifting containers for all of this beautiful water. Also, you are an emotional person, and strong emotions are not always appreciated in our culture. Giving yourself time and space to cry, to express this deep emotion. And this emotion, because of this Scorpio energy that you've got here, it could be on this global scale. You've got Jupiter over here in Aquarius. Aquarius is about, the community. It's about humanity. And so you've got Jupiter over here making everything bigger. Jupiter makes everything bigger. Jupiter's here in Aquarius making things bigger. And Aquarius is about humanity. And then you've got your moon here in the 11th house of the zodiac. And the 11th house is is ruled by Aquarius. So it's about humanity. So when you see people suffering on a global scale and you feel strong emotions about it, that's okay. Let those out. Release those tears. Allow yourself to feel. That's a very important part of what your toes are saying too, is allowing yourself to feel. When we look here at your communication expression toes, okay? These toes, they need to feel. And then we look at your relationship toes. These are your toes that are ruled by water. And so feeling is important for you. And sometimes this little toe that's pointed down there and some blocked energy up here in the top of this communication expression toe and this one, you sometimes feel like you cannot express, that it's not safe to express, that expressing could cause waves that make other people uncomfortable. And you don't want people to feel uncomfortable. You want everybody to just feel all safe all the time. Make sure you offer the same thing to yourself. So let's talk about this blocked energy up here in the top of these toes. So this is something that is ongoing. We can see down here at the base of the toes, time tracks in the toes from back here where it connects to the foot. This is a long time ago, out to the nails, which is where the first communication starts to happen in the toes. So you can see here, this toe is very, very flexible, at least here in the top. I would be curious to know the flexibility of this knuckle of your toe. But up here, we can see that this is a very flexible toe. You are flexible in your communication. You are flexible in the way that you express and show up. My guess is that you have the ability to walk into just about any space and be almost a shapeshifter. And that's a gift as long as you are not compromising yourself, which we've already established you already are. So this flexibility is a gift. But we don't want to be so flexible that we're like the water that falls out of the container and just is out there, because that kind of water is not directed water and it's wasted energy. Water can be so powerful. In fact, when we think about water, water is an element. Nothing can stop the water. We look at the Grand Canyon, that water over millions of years just moving through, created the Grand Canyon and all the canyons. So just embracing this water energy, this flowing energy that you have, but not having it be to your detriment. I want you to think about the difference between a river cutting through a canyon and a spilled glass of water on the counter, or water that is contained and harnessed into a dam that creates a lot of good in power and recreation and all sorts of things, because it's been organized and contained. But the difference between the container that you're in right now and the container that you can create is that you get to create your container and have it be a container that works for you. And that's one of the things that I would invite you to really focus on, is what's the container. We're all in a container. Like we talk about being all out of boxes all the time. Everybody's in a box. The question is it a box that you've created for yourself, or is it a box that you've allowed yourself to be put into? And I invite you to create your own box. And then the great thing is just like a plant that gets root bound in a box, when you start to feel stuck again, you can create a new box, a new planter, if you will, in this analogy. And here, where this top of the nail is pointing down, where do you feel like you cannot communicate, that you cannot express? Because it's showing up here, and these two toes are very, very connected. You don't express, you don't speak your truth, because it creates feelings of discomfort, or you perceive that it creates feelings of discomfort. And yet with all this Scorpio energy here with your sun, those are not relationships that will be lasting, and they are not relationships that ultimately bring good to either of the parties. All right, back here to your Cancer moon. Some of the non-negotiable needs, again, are making sure that you can express yourself emotionally, and having these boundaries. So when you think about a crab, Cancer is the crab, and crabs will sidestep. They don't want to have conflict. But what happens if you will not honor the boundary of the crab, right? You get in the crab's space and those little pincers come out. So I would invite you to consider, what are some of the relationships? And again, relationships are not just with people, but they are also with all things. What are some relationships that it's time to prune, that it's time to take out of your space, because they just don't belong there? Okay. That would be a good question to ask. And that really ties in to this left foot, fourth toe, relationship toe, because you've allowed relationships to be in your space that do not belong there. You've got blocked energy in here, because you are such a hub for the relationships. And so if you think about, if you're the hub of the relationship or the group, and there are people in that group that don't belong in that group, that don't belong within those boundaries, that just stretches you out. And then when it doesn't work out like you want to, you have a lot of self-blame about that. And it's not a bad thing, okay? There are just relationships that we have that just don't work for us. And that's okay, because we're not here on this planet and in this lifetime to have every single person, animal, organization, community, culture work for us. So what ones aren't working for you? What ones is it time to let go? Now, we just talked a lot about all the water that's in your chart. So your uh, so 3 of the 4 pillars in your chart are your sun, your moon, and your Chiron, which are all in water signs. So even with all this water, the signature of your chart, though, is Cardinal Earth. And the way that we determine the signature of your chart is we look at all of the major planets and where they fit in with. So I do this, and it's looking at what's cardinal, what's fixed, what's mutable, what's earth, fire, water, and air. And then you just do this little equation, and you are a cardinal earth. Now, your rising sign here is Virgo. So our rising sign is how people experience us first. So it would be, in that analogy of our body, it would be like the aura. When you start to experience people, you're experiencing their rising sign. This Virgo is your rising sign. Virgo is about wholeness. Virgo shadow side is perfection. So consider, in what areas do you feel like you need to be perfect? That's shadow Virgo. Virgo desires perfection, but it's not really perfection. It's really health and wholeness. Health is very important to you, and it's very important that you guard your health, that you take care of your health, that you honor these non-negotiable needs here that you have in your moon sign, because everything will crumble if you don't have your health. That is very important. And what I'm seeing here in this trajectory with your toes, as we have already talked about, it's really important that you guard that health. Okay, so what do I mean by cardinal earth? So cardinal signs are the first signs, like the cardinal directions, north, south, east, west. So you are a starter, you take action. And I can see that in these toes, because look at these long, straight action toes. When we look at those toes on each foot really look quite similar. They are straight, they are pointed, they are upright, your nail is nice and straight. You are an action taker. And so continue to do that. You've got a little bit of blocked energy in your right toe of your action toe. So just a little bit of massage on that toe is going to be really, really good for you. Back to these communication toes, I would definitely recommend massaging these communication toes, especially here at the tip, to just release that blocked energy. And this toe, I would push the toe. If this is the toe, I'd push that toe upward. Again, exploring some of those questions that we talked about with these first toes, to just build that flexibility. So yes, definitely action taking. So over here, your Mars, that is the ruler of this action toe, is in the sign of Capricorn. Capricorn is about achievement. Capricorn is going after something. Capricorn likes structure. And so again, building your own structures, building your own container that keeps that water contained. You absolutely can do this with your Mars in Capricorn. And your Venus is in Capricorn. So this is how you connect with other people. And so when we look at your cute toes here, look at how these communication, or this relationship toe here on the left side, how it leans into action. So what is your primary love language? So the love languages are acts of service. I'm going to guess that that's in the top 3 for sure. Acts of service, quality time, gifts, physical touch, and words of affirmation. So words are very important to you. Communication is very important to you. And action is very important to you. Do you know how to ask for what you need and how to feel loved? And when you are doing things for other people in order to show them love, do you feel like that love is received? So this is important for your moon sign there. And considering what other people's love languages are so that you can show them that you love them in their particular language. Now, you have down here your part of fortune, also in Capricorn. Part of fortune is where you're going to fall to for your fortune. It's naturally going to happen. And I love that your rising sign and your part of fortune, they're creating a trine. A trine is a triangle. It's a very harmonious aspect in your chart. And so as you create wholeness and you create your own container and you become aware of what your boundaries are, that is how fortune is going to come to you. And fortune can look like whatever fortune looks like. That's another great journaling question, is what does success or what does fortune or what does prosperity look like to me? And that will come to you as you create structures and as you take action on those things and achieve. The I statement for Capricorn is I am. Capricorn is, so we've got your sun, moon, and your rising. Capricorn is very important in your chart. So there's a lot of ways that you can find out about Capricorn energy. I'd be glad to discuss it more with you, but Capricorn is super, super important in your chart. So when we talked about prosperity and fortune, these last toes are your prosperity and trust toes. Okay, prosperity, trust, prosperity, and trust. And when we look at here on your right foot, it's really pointing into your relationship toe, but there's not a lot of blocked energy in there. So what I would recommend for this toe is just focus on having it be grounded. Like we talked about with the first two toes here, just grounding that toe. It is your earth toe. It is your primary connection with earth. And so pressing that toe down, or if you do a grounding exercise, grounding all the way through your body, down your legs, into your feet, all the way into your toes, and specifically into those fifth toes. Let's talk about this fifth toe here on your left foot. A question to consider is, in what ways do you not trust yourself? And how has this shown up for you? You do have a significant amount of blocked energy in this toe, and this is how you trust yourself, and it has to do with worthiness. So in what ways do you not feel worthy? A good mantra is, I am worthy in every way, or whatever feels like you can receive that. So trust and worthiness going on in this toe. This toe could really use a good massage to release that energy and to open yourself up to the possibilities of how you absolutely can trust yourself. The reason why you don't trust yourself is because you self-sabotage, or you bend over and submit yourself to other powers. And so sometimes you don't trust yourself. You don't trust yourself to keep your boundaries, or to state your boundaries, or to even know your boundaries. So these are all great questions to ask yourself. When we look here, just one other thing that I want to mention. This is your north node. This is the area of your chart that, so it says horseshoe looking thing. This is the area of your chart that in this lifetime we're being asked to stretch into. And it is right here on your rising sign here in Virgo. And so this is a stretchy zone for you. And by that, I mean, you're going to feel the edges of your comfort zone, and then you're going to push past those in order to accomplish what you're here to accomplish in this lifetime. It's also in the 12th house, which is about transformation. Or rather, it's about transcendence. And so part of your very special mission in this lifetime is to transcend some of the hierarchies, structures, and authorities that require perfection, and transcending that to determining what is whole and how you can create wholeness within your own structure, hierarchy, and boundaries. You are the authority of your life. You are the author of your own life. And that would be a great mantra for you. I am the author of my own life. I am my own authority. As you embrace that mantra, this first message from your toes with this protrusion here and the leaning over is, I can't wait to see your toes. Even if you took a picture of your toes in a month, the energy has already started to shift and you're going to notice a difference in those toes. So I hope that you have found this helpful. I am available for any questions that you have, and I hope you had a great birthday.